What's going on, fellas? Welcome back to Dell Tales, man. Tonight was a great night of UFC, especially for 310. Let's kick it off with Aljamain Sterling and Movsar Evloev. This fight actually ended up exactly how I expected, man. There was going to be a lot of grappling that happened. It wasn't going to be too much on the striking side because you really do have two heavy wrestlers that want to outdo each other, and it's going to be something personal to each other. So they come out, little bit of striking, not too much, but they take this fight straight to the ground. Now I have to give the edge to Movsar Evloev. He did actually end up getting the win, but he had the more ground control and definitely did more damage on the ground. Now neither person did much damage in this fight, so it's not as if one stood out heavily over the other. But when it came to almost what it was, a wrestling match, yeah, I have to give the edge to Movsar Evloev. He definitely did enough to get the W. And Aljamain Sterling, I don't really know what's going to be next for him because he went from being the champion at 135 to now his training partner is the champion at 135. And I don't know if he can be champ at 145. I just don't know, man. That's a tough division. Especially with the way that Max Holloway got knocked out a few weeks ago. So listen, that's a tough division. I definitely hope to see a lot more from Aljamain, but as of right now, he's not a big threat at 145. Does he go back to 135? Well, no, because his buddy Davashvili is actually the champion there. Davashvili didn't fight for the belt because Aljamain was the champ. Then obviously Aljamain moved up to 145 once Merab won it. So yeah, I don't think he'll be going back to 135. If anything, he might go up to 155. And he might be a little bit more competitive at that weight, but those guys get pretty big physically, and Aljamain is used to cutting down to 135 to fight, even though he walks around like 170. I just don't know if, what the best route is for him, but this is something that we'll watch closely and see what ends up happening. And now, this next one, Bryce Mitchell and Kron Gracie, look, let's just get straight to the point. If you're not a fan of technical fights, especially ones that end up on the ground, this fight, you were probably one of the people booing it. So Gracie did not want to come out here and fight, and he made it very obvious. He was definitely trying to pull guard to do his best to get a submission. We know that's what his family is known for, especially with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But Bryce was able to kind of get away from some of the dangerous positions. He almost got caught in an armbar in the second round. It didn't work out. In the third round, he kind of figured out, let me just keep Kron away from the fence. And as soon as he figured that out, Kron once again jumps for guard, and he gets slammed on his back. Now, I honestly think he was already knocked out when he got slammed on his back, but the crowd was definitely not enjoying this fight, and Bryce actually threw some elbows to end the fight in the third round. He tried his best, but when you're dealing with a grappler that's that good, you still have to survive what he may do to you. Gane and Alexander Volkov. Now, this is a fight that went the distance that I did not think would happen. These two guys are pretty good at knocking people out. The size discrepancy was definitely apparent in the beginning, but then it kind of disappeared almost immediately. Alex had a really nice spinning backhand that he used to shock Cyril with. Cyril recovered very quickly, but he was definitely wobbly for a moment there, and he was able to get some of his own punches thrown back, get some of the ground game, that actually helped him win this fight. Although Alex loses this fight, man, he's still a problem in the heavyweight division. I mean, any heavyweight is really a problem when you sit back and think about it. But as of right now, the fight we really want to see in heavyweight is going to be Francis Ngannou and John Jones. That's what everybody wants to see. I mean, even Turkey Al-Sheikh, over there in Saudi Arabia wants to make this fight happen. So I can't wait till we see that happen. But good fight overall for the heavyweight division. Next up, we got Nate Landwerh against Choi. Now, in this one, Choi started out this fight in pure domination mode. Let's just call it what it is. He came out landing a couple of other uppercuts and some jabs that, made Nate's eye just open up and start swelling a little bit. For me, Nate came out a little bit too confident. He almost came out not respecting Choi. At the level of fighting in the UFC, you have to respect everyone, and you better know anybody can beat you. And that's why they're there. They are the 1% of the 1%. Nate was the one asking the question who was going to slow down first, and he's actually the one that ended up starting shooting for takedowns. He took a lot of damage in the beginning and he was not able to give it back. Choi was right. Nate would get a little too aggressive and make a lot of mistakes, and Choi would be able to take advantage of that, and that's exactly what ended up happening. In the first round, all goes to Duho. Nate looked a lot slower than Choi in this fight. Like, you can tell there was a speed discrepancy. Choi took Nate down, let him back up, and took him right back down just to confirm that, yes, I can take you down whenever. The entire second round, I definitely had to give it to Choi as well, and now he's showing us his ability that he can take people down. All of his fights in the UFC have been very tough fights because he was not able to take people down and control them on the ground. So this was something new, from him that we've seen. He took a lot of damage from his fights, even though he won the majority of them. But he's changing up his game. He's improving his technique. His stand-up game looked amazing. He was so technical in this fight. And then in the third round, Choi actually ends up getting the finish. And I'm not shocked. I mean, he mentally took Nate out of the fight. In the third round, Nate definitely got desperate because he needed a finish to actually win. And he puts himself in a really bad position, gets put on the ground, ends up in a crucifix, and that's how the fight ends. Good fight overall, but definitely dominated by Duho Choi. Shavkat Rakhmonov and Ian Machado Garry. Now, this one right here is exactly going how I expected. This is exactly what I expected to happen the entire time. I knew Ian would not come out extra aggressive. He used to train with Shavkat. Why would he do that? He knows the danger he puts himself in. It just wouldn't make any sense to come out ultra, aggressive. However, he came out more passive than I expected to see, and I figured these changes would look a little bit different. I thought it would be much more striking, but they decided to kind of make it a grappling type of fight to the point where the ref is even breaking them up if, he has to, just to get some of the fight more exciting. But for the most part, this one was really more about both guys being passive and not wanting to make a mistake. They tried to find their range, landed some good punches from Shavkat, and Ian also kind of had his moments in the third round, but Ian just didn't look so confident inside the cage, man, which was kind of weird for me to see. I can honestly say I've never seen him fight this way. But like I said, man, this fight has such high stakes. You could get a title shot with a win like this. This is the reason why no one wants to fight any of these two guys either, Towards the end of the third round, though, Ian started finally picking up, like I said, but he started taking some risks. But then in the fourth round, he started taking pictures too much, getting caught with punches, and then he got taken down. All the grappling done in this fight, though, is not really, no one ended up with serious damage. So I was actually wondering how the judges were scoring the fight the whole time, but Rakhmonov does just enough to win the fight with the ground control and standing control as well. But somebody's O had to go, and for today it was definitely Ian's. Alexander Pantoja versus Kai Asakura. Now, this fight was definitely quite different than what I expected, to be honest, but I am familiar with Kai Asakura. I have seen him fight a lot in Ryzen Championship, and he's actually a really great fighter, but he is more of a Muay Thai style fighter, and there are some rules in MMA, of course, that don't favor him. What kind of sucks about that for him is the simple fact that, like, for example, if the opponent is downed in Ryzen, you can actually kick them in the head, which could end a fight quite quickly. And it's a very dangerous position to be in, of course. But he's used to being able to do that. So I wonder if MMA is a little bit limiting for the way that he's used to fighting. And that changes a lot about how he fights. Because he comes in and takes on Pantoja. Look, this was a dangerous fight for him to take from the get-go. Pantoja went in there after all the fire and actually did a great job controlling it. As soon as he got Kai to the ground, this fight was pretty much over in the second round, which is, kind of what was expected. There was no way that Kai could have survived that choke attempt. There was just no way. Pantoja made this fight look easy. But you have to understand, he's the champion for a reason. He's so good. He made Kai look like an easy fight, and I guarantee you Pantoja would never say this was an easy fight. He's just so good that he makes it look easy. Kai was exposed a little bit and shows that he can definitely be touched, and if you can weather the storm of the high knees and a couple of the power punches. And you know what? For him coming from 135 and fighting at 125, I won't be shocked in the UFC to see him move up to 135. He may be giving up a little bit of size fighting guys at 135, but at the same time, I think he will actually have access to all of his power instead of cutting weight to 125 and fighting those guys. But he definitely showed he was not phased under the lights, but the experience on the ground game for Alex and controlling this fight, like I said, Alex made it look easy. It was just too much for Kai in this one, man. Kai definitely needs a couple of tuner fights in the UFC to kind of help him get adjusted, because it is a little bit different fighting style than Ryzen.